What if the United States entered a deep recession before every other major economy, and the world had no time to prepare? For decades, the global economy has moved in sync, orbiting a single center of gravity. Trade flows, financial markets, supply chains, and currencies have all been calibrated around the stability of the U.S. economy. But beneath that apparent balance, silent pressures have been building: rising sovereign debt, fragile financial systems stretched by speculation, an acceleration of AI that quietly displaces millions of jobs before new ones can exist. The system looks stable until it isn't. This is not a prediction. This is a simulation. In this alternate economy, the shock does not begin at the margins. It begins at the core. While other nations expect a familiar pattern, a slowdown spreading from weaker economies outward, the United States stumbles first. Confidence fractures. Markets react before policymakers can respond. And suddenly, the engine that once stabilized the world becomes a source of global uncertainty. Stay with me through the simulation, because what you are about to see may change how you understand future predictions and economic power. A U.S. first recession doesn't just affect American households. It rewires global expectations. The dollar's role, the behavior of megacorporations, the pace of AI adoption, and the fragile trust between economies all begin to shift at once. What once felt unthinkable starts to feel inevitable. In a global economy, with a scenario like this, timing is everything. When the collapse starts early, there is no blueprint. Governments hesitate. Markets overreact. Megacorporations move faster than states, using automation and data to protect themselves while millions are left exposed. And somewhere between fear and opportunity, a new economic timeline begins to form. What you're about to witness is the first tremor of that transformation, the moment when assumptions fail, and the future stops following the old script. Maybe this is closer to reality than it seems. And this is exactly where this alternate timeline begins to take shape. As we step deeper into the simulation, I want you to treat it not as passive entertainment, but as a shared thought experiment. If any part of the scenario already stands out to you, if this alternate economy feels plausible, unsettling, or familiar, say it quietly in the comments. A short reflection is enough. It helps this kind of analysis reach others who are also questioning the future of the global economy. And if this exploration of a global economy, what if resonates with you, a simple signal of support, like leaving a like, tells the system that these future predictions matter. Subscribing, if it feels right, means staying connected as we map more alternate timelines, where AI, megacorporations, and economic power evolve in unexpected ways. This isn't about volume or virality. It's about building a space for people who want to think seriously about where the world economy could be heading. Now, with that said, let's return to the timeline itself. Because once the initial shock hits, it doesn't announce itself with a single collapse. It unfolds quietly, month by month, through layoffs that seem temporary, markets that promise quick recoveries, and policies that underestimate the depth of the problem. The early years of this U.S. first recession are defined not by panic, but by disbelief. And it's inside that hesitation that the most important economic shifts begin to take place. In the first years of this alternate timeline, the shift is subtle before it becomes undeniable. What begins as a correction quickly deepens into contraction. Markets slide, not in a single dramatic collapse, but in waves of lost confidence. Companies freeze hiring, then quietly cut positions. Consumer spending tightens as households sense something is wrong, even before the data confirms it. For millions of Americans, stability dissolves into uncertainty almost overnight. The promise that this is temporary lingers until it doesn't. As months turn into years, the shockwave moves outward. The dollar weakens, shaking a system built on its reliability. Global markets panic, not because they don't understand recessions, but because this one arrived out of sequence. Economies tied to U.S. demand feel the impact instantly. Exports fall, currencies fluctuate, and growth projections are rewritten. The world is reminded how interconnected the global economy truly is, and how fragile that synchronization becomes when the core falters. Now I want to go deeper into what happens next behind the headlines and official statements. Governments and central banks respond with urgency, deploying tools refined during past crises. Interest rates are adjusted, liquidity is injected, and emergency measures become normalized. But this time, the scale is different. Debt limits are tested. Trust in institutions erodes faster than policies can restore it. At the same time, megacorporations move with precision. They accelerate AI adoption, automate aggressively, and consolidate weakened competitors. Survival favors size, data, and speed. Power quietly concentrates while regulation lags behind reality. As the decade unfolds, the world begins to reconfigure itself. New economic blocks emerge as countries seek insulation from U.S.-centric risk. Trade routes shift. Alternative payment systems and reserve strategies gain traction. Some regions align around technology and AI-driven productivity rather than traditional resources. Economic influence becomes less about borders and more about platforms, infrastructure, and control over data. A new balance of power forms, not stable, but functional. Within this transformation, two extreme futures start to take shape. In one, early collapse forces reinvention. Productivity gains from AI are distributed. Work is redefined, and an abundance economy slowly emerges. In the other, concentration dominates. Wealth, automation, and decision-making remain locked within a narrow elite, while most people adapt to scarcity and reduced agency. Both futures exist simultaneously, separated not by technology, but by choices made in moments of pressure. When this new order begins to stabilize, the deepest impacts are no longer purely economic. They become personal. Daily routines change. Careers lose their linear path. Purpose is questioned as work becomes less central to identity. A collective mentality shifts from growth to resilience, from certainty to adaptation. This journey reshapes relationships, culture, and the quiet expectations people hold about their place in the world. Beneath the surface, there are truths rarely discussed. How fragile confidence is, how fast norms dissolve, and how transformation often feels invisible while it's happening. There is still more unfolding in this timeline, forces that have not yet fully revealed themselves. But before we move further, if this path feels coherent to you, grounded in reality rather than fiction, write in the comments. That makes sense to me. As this timeline moves into its third year, the nature of the crisis changes. The initial shock is no longer the story. Survival is. Governments shift from denial to intervention, and emergency measures quietly become permanent architecture. The U.S. government floods the system with liquidity, expanding balance sheets beyond what once felt politically possible. Central banks act less like guardians of stability and more like engineers of outcomes, recalibrating markets in real time. On paper, collapse is avoided. In reality, the structure of the economy is being rewritten. Now I want to go even deeper into the scenario, into the hidden mechanics shaping the years that follow. As public institutions struggle with speed and scale, megacorporations move decisively. Automation accelerates not as an innovation strategy, but as a defensive one. AI replaces entire layers of labor, not because it is perfect, but because it is predictable. Acquisitions absorb weakened competitors. Supply chains collapse inward. Economic survival becomes centralized, optimized, and increasingly opaque. Smaller businesses fade from the landscape, not with headlines, but with silence. Along this journey, regulation tries to respond, but it is always late. Policy frameworks built for slower eras fail to contain entities that now operate across borders, platforms, and legal definitions. Power concentrates not just financially, but cognitively. Decisions affecting millions are made by a narrow class of executives and algorithms, far removed from daily life. This is one of the first quiet revelations of this future. Collapse doesn't always look chaotic. Sometimes it looks efficient. As years pass and this new logic hardens, the global system begins to reconfigure itself. Countries once aligned under U.S.-led structures search for alternatives. Regional alliances strengthen. Trade fragments. Economic identity shifts from national productivity to technological leverage. AI capacity, data sovereignty, and energy access define new blocks of power. The global economy becomes multipolar, but not equal. Influence flows through infrastructure, not ideology. Within this reordering, two extreme paths emerge. In one, The same technologies that concentrated power are forced open. AI-driven abundance reduces scarcity, work evolves, and productivity gains reshape social contracts. In the other, concentration becomes destiny. Wealth, automation, and opportunity remain locked at the top, while most adapt to constrained choices. These futures coexist, separated by decisions made under pressure behind closed doors. When this order begins to stabilize, the deepest impact is internal. People recalibrate expectations. Careers become provisional. Identity detaches from occupation. A collective mentality forms around adaptation rather than ambition. This transformation reshapes routines, relationships, and purpose itself. The hidden truth of this future is not technological. It's psychological. And there is still one more layer beneath all of this, a force shaping outcomes long before they are visible. Before we reach it, write in the comments, I'm on this journey too. As this alternate timeline stretches beyond the 7th year, something subtle but irreversible takes place. The United States begins a slow, uneven recovery, but the world no longer waits for it. Confidence, once centralized, has fragmented. Other regions decouple by necessity, not ideology. What started as a defensive reaction evolves into independent momentum. Economic gravity shifts not suddenly, but persistently, as countries recalibrate trade, finance, and strategy around a future where U.S. stability is no longer guaranteed. Now I want to go even deeper into the scenario, into backstage of this future, where power quietly rearranges itself. New economic blocks form, bound less by geography and more by shared infrastructure. Payment systems detach from the dollar. Alternative reserve currencies emerge, not dominant, but sufficient. They coexist, diluting the influence of any single anchor. In this environment, the global economy becomes modular, flexible, harder to predict, easier to fracture. Along the decade, a new kind of influence rises. AI-driven economies gain disproportionate leverage, not because of population or territory, but because of efficiency. Decisions that once required public debate are optimized through systems, platforms, and predictive models. Some of these structures operate without traditional democratic oversight, justified by performance and stability. Power migrates away from nations and into networks of data, logistics, and computation. This is one of the quieter revelations of this future. Authority no longer needs a flag. As this reconfiguration deepens, two extreme trajectories sharpen. In one path, these systems are coordinated toward abundance. Automation reduces scarcity. Productivity gains are reinvested into social resilience. Human labor evolves rather than disappears. The economy becomes less extractive, more adaptive. In the other path, concentration hardens into permanence. AI, capital, and decision-making consolidate into closed ecosystems. Access defines destiny. Mobility narrows. Opportunity becomes conditional. These futures unfold side by side, shaped by choices made years earlier, often under crisis pressure. When this new order begins to stabilize, its most profound impact is no longer measured in GDP or trade balances. It shows up in daily life. Routines fragment. Careers are redesigned around flexibility and uncertainty. Identity detaches from long-term roles and reattaches to short-term relevance. A collective mentality emerges, less optimistic, but more aware. People navigate this journey with a constant tension between adaptation and fatigue. Purpose is no longer inherited. It is constructed repeatedly. Beneath these visible changes lies a deeper truth about this timeline. Systems did not replace humanity. They exposed its vulnerabilities, its dependencies, and its reluctance to confront slow-moving transformations. The impact is psychological as much as economic, reshaping how people perceive security, progress, and meaning itself. There is still another layer forming beneath this reconfigured world, a force that will determine whether this future bends toward balance or fractures further. Before we reach that point, write in the comments, that future feels possible. As this timeline continues to unfold, the consequences of earlier decisions begin to crystallize. What once felt like temporary responses now define long-term trajectories. In the early years, the shock forced adaptation. Along the decade, it forced alignment. And now, Two extreme futures stand clearly in view, shaped not by chance, but by control over technology, capital, and policy. Now I want to go even deeper into the scenario, into the point where divergence becomes unavoidable. In one path, the early U.S. collapse acts as a catalyst. Institutions learn from fragility instead of denying it. Innovation decentralizes. AI is deployed not just for efficiency, but for resilience. Local production networks grow stronger. Financial systems become more modular. The global economy restructures itself around redundancy rather than speed. This is an abundance economy, not defined by excess, but by stability. Productivity gains translate into shorter work cycles, broader access, and a renewed social contract. Growth becomes quieter, but more durable. In the parallel path, the outcome is very different. The same technologies are captured instead of shared. Wealth concentrates permanently, shielded by policy and complexity. AI becomes a tool of exclusion, optimizing profits while displacing entire segments of the population. Economic mobility narrows until it feels theoretical. A small, AI-optimized elite operates above the system, while the majority adapts to precarity, retraining cycles, and conditional access to opportunity. This is a concentration economy, efficient on the surface, brittle underneath. As years pass, these two realities coexist within the same world. The difference is not geography, but governance. Not innovation, but intention. Behind the scenes, the true battle is invisible. Who sets the rules? Who owns the data? Who shapes the incentives? This is one of the hidden revelations of this future. Technology does not decide outcomes. People do, often long before consequences are visible. When this divergence stabilizes, its impact reaches far beyond markets. It reshapes daily routines and long-term journeys. Work becomes episodic. Identity detaches from career permanence. Purpose is redefined around adaptability rather than achievement. A collective mentality emerges, marked by vigilance and quiet recalibration. People measure success less by accumulation and more by autonomy. The transformation is internal as much as structural. Beneath all of this lies a deeper truth about this timeline. The future was never decided by collapse alone, but by how societies interpreted it, as a failure to be patched or a signal to change direction. That distinction continues to ripple forward, influencing outcomes not yet fully visible. There is still one final layer to uncover in the simulation, one that connects these paths to a choice that hasn't been made yet. Before we move forward, write in the comments, I see both futures. As this alternate timeline moves forward and the new economic order begins to feel permanent, the most profound consequences are no longer visible on charts or dashboards. They appear quietly inside daily life. In the early years, work was disrupted. Along the decade, it was redefined. And when this system finally stabilizes, work no longer holds the same meaning it once did. Automation advances faster than job creation, not as a sudden rupture, but as a steady erosion. Roles disappear, reappear, and disappear again. Careers lose their narrative arc. Now I want to go even deeper into the scenario, into the human layer often overlooked in economic simulations. Purpose begins to fragment. For generations, participation in the economy was synonymous with identity, contribution, and progress. In this future, that link weakens. Social mobility becomes less predictable, more conditional. Education no longer guarantees direction. Effort no longer guarantees outcome. A quiet tension settles in, the feeling of doing everything right and still drifting. As years pass, a new collective mentality forms. People adapt their routines not around ambition, but around resilience. Short-term thinking replaces long-term planning. Life becomes modular, episodic, optimized for uncertainty. Relationships, locations, even values grow more flexible. This is not collapse. It is transformation, but it comes with a cost. Cultural identity fractures as shared economic experiences disappear. Society no longer moves together. It moves in parallel tracks. Behind the scenes of this future, a truth becomes harder to ignore. The system no longer needs everyone. And for the first time, A generation grows up questioning not just how to succeed, but whether participation itself is meaningful. Some disengage quietly. Others search for purpose outside traditional structures, community networks, creative work, localized economies. These are not rebellions. They are adaptations. When this reality settles in, the impact is deeply psychological. Anxiety shifts from fear of failure to fear of irrelevance. The journey of adulthood becomes less about climbing and more about navigating. People measure progress internally rather than socially. There are revelations here about dignity, about value, about what societies reward when efficiency becomes a dominant logic. And yet, beneath this uncertainty, something else is forming. A question the system itself has not answered. If work is no longer central, if participation is optional, what replaces it as a foundation of meaning? That question lingers unresolved, shaping decisions that have not yet fully surfaced. Before we move into that final layer of the simulation, write in the comments, I feel this shift. As this simulation approaches its most reflective layer, the meaning of everything that came before begins to sharpen. A U.S. first recession was never just an economic anomaly. In the early years, it looked like a shock. Along the decade, it revealed structure. And when this new order starts to feel normal, its true impact becomes impossible to ignore. Markets adjusted, systems adapted, but trust, once fractured, never fully returned to its previous form. Now I want to go even deeper into what this imbalance truly changed. The early collapse forced the world to confront a hidden dependency it had long ignored. Economic leadership was assumed, not guaranteed. Stability was borrowed, not owned. When the United States stumbled first, the illusion of a synchronized global economy dissolved. What emerged instead was a fragmented system, held together by necessity rather than confidence. Governments interpreted this moment differently. Some treated it as a warning, a signal to diversify, decentralize, and rebuild resilience into their economies. Others saw it as an opportunity to consolidate control, to accelerate automation, and tighten the relationship between capital and power. These decisions, often made quietly and under pressure, shaped outcomes far more than the recession itself. This is one of the central revelations of this future. Collapse does not decide direction. Interpretation does. As the years passed and the new global order stabilized, the nature of economic trust fundamentally changed. Trust shifted away from institutions and toward systems, from promises to performance, from long-term narratives to short-term functionality. Human labor, once the backbone of economic participation, became conditional, valued when efficient, sidelined when not. The journey of progress turned inward, forcing societies to redefine contribution, dignity, and relevance. This transformation did not arrive with consensus. It arrived with tension, between efficiency and inclusion, between innovation and displacement, between a future designed for optimization and one designed for people. And beneath all of it, a quiet question lingered. Was this imbalance a failure of the old system or the birth of something more adaptive? That question remains unanswered in this timeline, because the future does not lock itself into a single path. It branches continuously, shaped by decisions that seem small when they are made and inevitable when they are remembered. A U.S. first recession reshaped markets. Yes, but more importantly, it reshaped assumptions about order, labor, and trust itself. And somewhere just ahead in the simulation, there is still a moment where direction can shift again. A point where this alternate world leans toward renewal or further fragmentation. Before we step into that final reflection, write in the comments, this feels like a real crossroads. If you've stayed with the simulation until now, it tells me something important. It means these alternate economic futures matter to you, not as spectacle, but as a way to think more clearly about where the global economy might be heading. This channel exists exactly for that purpose. To explore web economy scenarios, future predictions, and deep simulations that connect markets, technology, power, and human impact into a single narrative. If this journey made you pause, reflect, or reconsider what feels stable today, let me know you reached the end. Leave a comment saying this future really made me think. It helps me understand which questions are worth going even deeper into next. A quiet signal of support like a like on this video, helps these kinds of long-form economic simulations reach others who are also searching for meaning behind the numbers. And if you want to keep exploring alternate timelines, worlds shaped by different decisions, collapses, and breakthroughs, subscribing keeps you connected to what comes next in this series. There's another simulation right here that connects directly with this one. Click and keep going with me there. The story of the global economy doesn't end. It branches, and the next path is already waiting.